Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the frigid stone corridors of a medieval castle, not as a knight or a queen hosting a feast, but as a pregnant noblewoman on the verge of giving birth. It's dark, damp, and drafty. The fire is smoldering low, the rushes on the floor barely masking the stink of last week's chamber pot, and the midwife has just been summoned from a nearby village by torchlight. Your husband is pacing, muttering prayers to saints you barely remember, and you're clutching a wooden bedpost, trying not to scream as another contraction rips through you. No doctors, no painkillers, no concept of hygiene. And just so we're clear, your chances of dying from this birth are terrifyingly high. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments so we can see just how far this little sleepy history community stretches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not royalty, but you're noble high enough on the feudal ladder to live in a fortified manor, which some might generously call a castle. You've grown up with obligations and etiquette drilled into your bones, and now carrying your first child, all eyes are on your womb. It's not about you anymore. It's about lineage, heirs, land. Your body is a vessel for continuing the family line, and everyone from the steward to the bishop is waiting for you to perform your duty. It's been months of isolation. As soon as your belly showed, you were kept mostly indoors. Not for your comfort, no. This is more about modesty and superstition. It was believed that pregnant women were spiritually vulnerable, exposed to demons or curses, so the fewer people who saw you, the better. You were given bland food for your humors and kept away from loud noises or strong emotions. Laughter was thought to shake the womb. Crying could summon melancholy. You weren't even allowed to witness funerals or thunderstorms lest the child absorb the terror. And then there were the relics. A priest came by last month to hang a St. Margaret medallion above your bed. She's the patron saint of childbirth, after all. You were instructed to recite specific prayers to her every morning, ideally, while kneeling. That's not so easy with swollen ankles and back pain that makes you weep silently at night, but you try. You always try. Your confessor told you that death in childbirth was a white martyrdom, a holy death. That doesn't comfort you. It only reminds you of how often it happens. Your chamber has been converted into a birthing room. The men have been banished except maybe the priest if things go south. The bed is low pushed near the hearth and covered in coarse linen sheets that were boiled. Thank God, though the water was probably only lukewarm. You're surrounded by women, your mother-in-law, who never stops frowning. Your closest maid, who keeps wringing her hands, and the midwife whose breath smells like onions and sage. She has delivered dozens of babies. Some survived, some didn't. As you lie back and wait, everything slows down. Time becomes a strange thing. You notice the uneven cracks in the ceiling stones, the way the candlelight dances like shadows in a fever dream. Every groan and creak of the wooden floor feels amplified, and yet there's silence. The kind of silence that comes right before something irreversible happens. Labor starts slowly, a tightening, then another. You think maybe you imagined it, but no. The midwife notices your shift in breathing. She presses her calloused hand to your belly, nods. It's begun, she says, like she's announcing a harvest or a storm. You want to run, but you can't even sit up without help. The pain comes like waves, but not the kind that soothe or carry you. These are crashing, brutal breakers, and you're left gasping in their wake. The midwife hands you a leather strap. "Bite this," she says. "Don't scream too loud. It frightens the child." You nod obedient, but tears streak down your cheeks anyway. No one wipes them. There's a bowl of warm wine on the table mulled with cloves, and they let you sip it once. That's your anesthetic. You clench your fist so hard your nails draw blood. Hours pass, maybe days. You're not sure. Time is gone. It's just the pain now, and the fire and the smell of sweat and iron and something more ancient. You see visions, or maybe just memories. You remember your mother's face the last time you saw her. She died in childbirth too. You think of the cradle downstairs, hand-carved, draped in lace, and wonder if anyone will ever place a child in it. Your screams eventually tear free despite the strap. You feel like your body is splitting. The midwife checks, nods again. The babe is coming. She says it like a command, as if the child has a choice. You're told to push. You push like your life depends on it, because it does. You feel pressure, tearing agony so intense you forget who you are. And then, a cry. A thin, wet wail that fills the room like a miracle. A baby. Yours. They hold the child up to show you. A boy. Blue and slick and screaming. You laugh and cry at once. You're so tired you barely notice the afterbirth. The midwife works quickly, murmuring thanks to Saint Margaret. She hands the baby to your maid, who begins swaddling him in wool. But the pain isn't over. There's blood, too much of it. You feel faint. The women look worried now. The midwife presses herbs against your belly, muttering something in Latin. The priest is summoned. You know what that means. He anoints your forehead. Last rites. Your lips are dry. You whisper a prayer but forget the words halfway through. You close your eyes and hope the bleeding stops. You wake up hours later, or maybe days, alive, weak, but breathing. The baby is beside you, warm and wriggling. A boy, a future. Somehow against the odds you made it. But you're not the same. Something deep within you has shifted. You've stared into the abyss and come back. You survived a medieval birth, and now the real journey begins. The days after the birth bleed together like ink on wet parchment. You're still in your bed, the mattress stained, and your body aching in places you didn't know could ache. The baby lies close, his tiny form bundled so tightly in swaddling cloth he can't move. That's on purpose. It's believed to protect his limbs from warping as he grows. You watch him breathe shallow and rhythmic, and wonder how such a small thing could cause so much pain and somehow so much wonder. But you're not alone. The birthing chamber isn't quiet now. It's a hive of movement. Servants carry buckets of water to wash the linens, though few are truly clean. The midwife still hovers her hands, always busy with herbs, poultices, or binding cloth. She checks your bleeding. She checks the baby's color. She checks the flow of your milk. And always, always she mutters to herself or to God, a quiet ward against the spirits she believes still linger in the corners. Your mother-in-law has taken over the room like a queen without a crown. She inspects the baby and sniffs. He has your husband's nose, she says, like it's the highest praise you could earn. She gives you little credit. As far as she's concerned, your job was to carry and birth the child. Now others will shape him, educate him. You're a vessel still, though now an emptied one, and you weakened, stitched, and pale must begin your purification. You've heard of the churching ritual your entire life, but now it feels personal. The church teaches that after childbirth, a woman is spiritually impure, not because she sinned, but because of the blood, the fluids, the mortal risk. You are marked. And until a priest blesses you and welcomes you back into the community, you cannot take communion, cannot attend Mass, cannot be fully present among the faithful. So you wait. 6 weeks, typically. 40 days if the child is a boy. You spend it in a kind of limbo, technically recovering, but expected to begin mothering duties as soon as you can sit upright. Your breasts are swollen, tender, leaking unpredictably. There's no understanding of lactation. In terms of science, only superstition. Some say if your milk flows too fast, it will drown the child. Others say bad thoughts can sour it. You're not sure what to believe. Feeding the baby is harder than you imagined. Sometimes he latches. Sometimes he screams. You try different positions, different times of day, all while perched on the edge of your narrow bed, afraid to shift too far, lest the blood begin again. If your body fails to produce milk, there's a wet nurse waiting in the wings, a peasant woman from the village brought in specifically for this role. But hiring a wet nurse comes with judgment. It implies weakness. And worse, it means another woman's influence will shape your son in his most fragile days. The wet nurse has milk. She's healthy. She smells like soil and wood smoke, and she sings lullabies you've never heard before. The baby settles when she holds him, and for a moment you hate her. Then you hate yourself for that feeling. Then you feel nothing but shame. Your own recovery is uneven. Some days you sit by the window wrapped in layers of wool and fur, breathing in the cold air like it's proof you're still alive. Other days you can't rise at all. The bleeding has slowed, but your muscles are weak. Your hair starts falling out. You lose weight in the face, but your belly remains soft and sore. You overhear one of the chambermaids whisper that you look withered. You pretend not to hear. The priest visits once a week, asking after your soul, your thoughts, your fears. You want to ask him about death, about why God lets women die alone, screaming with no balm but boiled wine and prayer. You don't ask. Instead, you nod, you thank him, and you let him sprinkle holy water near your bed. Your husband comes less often. He visited you the day after the birth, offered a brief smile, and kissed your forehead like a knight praising a brave squire. He's busy now, managing estates, meeting with advisors, preparing to announce the birth of an heir to the local lords. You understand. This child is important not just to you, but to everyone who depends on your husband's lineage. You overhear the steward planning a feast, not in your honor, of course, but to celebrate the child's arrival. A boar is slaughtered. Wine casks are opened. Musicians are summoned from the nearby abbey. There is laughter downstairs, flickering torchlight, the clatter of goblets and boots on stone. You lie in bed listening to it all, your body bruised and stretched, and wonder if this is joy or just tradition. At night, the castle grows colder. Your chamber has tapestries on the wall and thick rugs beneath the bed, but the wind still finds its way through the cracks. You pull the baby closer to your chest, afraid he'll grow too cold. There's no such thing as central heating. Only the hearth. Only your body heat. You press your cheek against his and count his breaths. Sometimes you think of the women who didn't survive. You knew them. Friends, cousins. A girl from the manor who bled out before the midwife even arrived. They haunt your dreams, not as ghosts, but as reminders. You whisper their names during sleepless nights and thank the saints that you weren't one of them. This time. Eventually, the 40 days pass. You are summoned for your churching. You dress slowly. The garments feel stiff, unfamiliar. A servant brushes your hair and helps you into a heavy cloak. You're not yet strong, but this is important. You must be seen. You must be blessed. You walk slowly to the chapel, each step an effort, the air damp and chilled. The priest meets you at the door. He murmurs the prayers, traces a cross over your head, and hands you a taper to light. It flickers in your trembling grip. The blessing is brief. There is no ceremony. No one applauds. But when you exit, something has shifted. The women bow their heads. The men nod respectfully. You are whole again. Not just a mother, but a lady of the household. That night you hold your child and whisper the tale of his birth, not the screams or the pain, but the fact that he came from you through blood and darkness into light. You feel for the first time not just used, but transformed. You survived. You were purified. You are a mother. And outside the walls of your castle, the world continues to turn indifferent and immense. But inside this chamber, it has narrowed to the beat of your heart and the breath of your child. You've resumed walking the halls, though slowly, like someone learning to move again. The maids curtsy. The steward bows. Your husband nods satisfied. You're no longer confined to the birthing chamber, but even as your body stitches itself back together, you know that you're changed in ways no one else sees. They look at you and see success, an air, a recovery. But inside you still carry the echo of that agony, the terror that you nearly didn't make it. The baby sleeps most of the day, but his cries at night are sharp and insistent. You're learning the rhythms of his needs. When he fusses, it's not always hunger. Sometimes it's the cold, the pin of a loose thread in his swaddle, or nothing you can identify at all. You rock him in the crook of your arm, walking the uneven stone floor, whispering hymns you half remember from your childhood. There's no nursery, no separate room. The child sleeps with you beneath thick covers, a fire flickering low in the hearth. It's only now that you begin to grasp how many eyes are watching him. Every cough, every silence too long, draws worry from the women around you. Infants die easily. Fevers strike fast. A chill can turn deadly in a matter of hours. The castle has no doctors, just the midwife, some herbs, and a handful of prayers. You find yourself checking his breathing over and over again, laying your hand on his chest, feeling that fragile flutter beneath. Baptism comes swiftly. It must. Church doctrine holds that an unbaptized baby, if it dies, is condemned to limbo. It's not hell, but it's not heaven either. A place without God. And so no one delays. Even if you're still bleeding and feverish, the baby must be taken to the chapel. It's a somber, urgent procession. The priest blesses the child, anoints him with chrism, and gives him a name chosen weeks ago by your husband's family. You wanted a say in the name, but in truth, you were never asked. The name had to honor lineage signal alliances, reflect heritage. It wasn't about charm or sentiment. It was political. Your input, while welcome in theory, was politely bypassed. You cradled your son during the ceremony and repeated the name aloud, Henricus. You don't love it. But you hold it in your mouth like bread, necessary, sustaining. After baptism, the pace of life picks up. Winter is fading, and with spring comes visitors' feasts, negotiations. You're expected to appear beside your husband again dressed finely, your body disguised beneath velvet and fur. No one mentions your labor. No one asks about the hours you bled or screamed or whispered your mother's name into the void. They only ask to see the child. Is he strong? Is he calm? Does he resemble the grandfather? They pass him around, cooing, and you smile like you're supposed to. But your hands twitch every time he's out of your grasp. You watch the way others hold him alert for missteps, and you silently count the seconds until he is back in your arms. In the evenings when the great hall quiets, you sometimes slip away to the chapel. Not for show, not for ritual, just to sit. The flickering candles, the chill in the air, the scent of incense, all of it wraps around you like a veil. You kneel slowly and pray, but not for strength or salvation. You pray for time, just time. Time to see your son grow. Time to get through the next birth, because there will be another, that you know. It's not spoken, but it hangs in the air like smoke. Your body is expected to produce again. Not immediately, no, but within the year. Noble women are expected to breed, to ensure heirs and spares. Your own mother bore 6 children before she died. 2 lived. The math is grim, but the expectation endures. Your husband begins visiting your chamber again. At first, it's simply to talk, to sit with the baby in his lap and remark on the weight of fatherhood. But eventually you sense what's coming. The touch on your hand, the kiss on your brow. Your heart races not with longing, but with dread. Your body is still healing. You don't say no. You don't say yes either. It's just the way of things. You lie still. You wait for it to be over. Afterwards, you bathe in cold water laced with rosemary and thyme. You scrub gently, trying not to aggravate the tender areas. The chambermaid helps, saying nothing. You both know the routine. Your cycles haven't returned yet. You've heard that nursing can delay them, but no one really understands why. Still, you're alert to the signs: a change in appetite, nausea, the sudden aversion to meat. The signs of early pregnancy are subtle, but your body knows. It remembers. And the moment you suspect, the fear coils in your chest like a snake. Not yet. Please, not yet. You tell no one. You wait. Each day is a strange blend of monotony and tension. Feeding the baby, walking the halls, sitting in on embroidery with the other ladies, listening to the steward recite the accounts. Your days are structured, but your mind is not. You drift. You remember the pain of childbirth like it's a story someone else told you, but your body doesn't forget. Every step that jars your hips, every cough that tugs your muscles, it's all still there. Your son begins to smile. It's a gummy, uncertain thing, but it lights you up from the inside. For the first time, you feel something close to joy. Real joy, not relief, not duty fulfilled, but something like a pulse of sunlight in your chest. You whisper his name over and over, watching him coo. He's growing, stronger, louder. You realize you've stopped checking his breathing every few minutes. You've started sleeping again, not much, but enough to dream. And in your dreams, you're running. Through green fields, barefoot, not pregnant, not nursing, just yourself. But then you wake. The castle walls return, the cold stone, the weight of your role. Still the dream lingers, and you carry it with you like a secret, a talisman against the next storm, because you know it's coming. Another birth, another battle. But for now, your son sleeps in your arms, and outside the castle, the snow is melting, and the world is turning green again. Spring deepens, and the castle stirs with the energy of renewal. The livestock are loosed from their shelters, the fields are plowed, and the courtyard rings with the hammering of repairs long delayed by winter frost. You watch all this from the high window in your solar, your son swaddled against your chest. The world is waking up, and so are you, but slowly like a bell dragged from silence. Your body still aches, but the pain has dulled to something more manageable. It hums in the background, like the droning chant of monks, constant but ignorable if you focus elsewhere. You've regained some strength. You can descend the stairs now without help. You can attend meals, though you rarely finish them. The food tastes of iron and ash. You blame it on the wine, though you know better. You're not sure when it began, but the nausea has returned. It's worst in the mornings, just as the cook's boy carries the heavy tray to your chamber. Porridge, poached eggs, meat pies that make your stomach twist. The smells rise before the food reaches you. Sometimes you retch into a basin before the door even opens. You haven't told anyone. Not yet. It's too soon. You're not ready to say the words aloud. But you know. Your body is already different, already shifting. A second pregnancy. Less than a year after the first. There's no room to process what you feel, just the facts. You are with child again. Your husband takes the news well when you finally gather the courage to tell him. He places a hand on your belly like he's touching a favored hunting hound. He smiles proud, already imagining another heir. He praises you, calls you blessed. You nod, eyes downcast, your lips curled in a smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Behind closed doors, you cry. Not because you're ungrateful, not because you don't love the child already growing inside you, but because you remember. Every shudder of pain, every fevered breath, every prayer whispered into the dark with your skin slicked in blood. And you're not sure you can do it again. But there's no time for mourning. Preparations begin the same day. The wet nurse is kept close just in case you falter early. The midwife is informed, discreetly invited to visit more often. The priest blesses you after Mass, his fingers cool on your forehead, his eyes full of something like pity or perhaps caution. You go through the motions of noble life. You stitch with the ladies in the solar embroidering altar cloths and baby gowns. You oversee the kitchens once a week, standing near the hearth to sample stews and mark down stores of dried meat and barley. You make appearances during evening meals, offering your husband silent support as he negotiates alliances and disputes. But your thoughts are elsewhere, always elsewhere, on the tiny fluttering within you, on the weight of what's coming. You watch your son take his first clumsy steps on the rush-strewn floor, his chubby fingers clutching a servant's hand, and you smile through the veil of exhaustion that never seems to lift. The household whispers about your strength, that you're dutiful, fruitful, obedient. They don't see how you grip the edge of the basin each morning, how your back spasms at night, how you've begun to dread the moonlight that signals another night without sleep. They see only the surface, a lady fulfilling her role. The midwife recommends certain herbs to ease your nerves. Valerian chamomile mugwort. You drink them at twilight, steeped in honeyed wine. They don't cure the fear, but they slow its pace. You begin to dream again, but the dreams are darker now, thick forests, voices calling your name, your feet bound by invisible cords as you try to run. Sometimes you wake and forget where you are. The ceiling above you seems too high, the walls too close. You turn to the fire, to your sleeping child, to the cool air of the castle, and remind yourself, I am alive. I am here. This is real. The second pregnancy is harder. Your back aches sooner. Your joints throb with the weight of carrying 2 children in 2 years. You're more cautious this time, more withdrawn. You eat sparingly, walk carefully, speak softly. The women in the castle watch you with a new kind of reverence. They've seen others fail. They know how rare it is to survive back-to-back births. You receive a letter from your sister, married in a manor 2 counties away. She writes of her own confinement, her own pain, and the loss of her second child 2 days after birth. You read it in silence, then fold it and place it under your pillow. That night you sleep with your hand curled around your stomach, whispering, not mine, not this one. The midwife begins her visits in earnest during your 6th month. She brings talismans. This time a piece of iron to hang over the door, a birthing girdle painted with holy symbols, scraps of parchment inscribed with saintly blessings to be tucked into your bedding. She bathes your feet in warm wine and salt, murmuring prayers beneath her breath. It's half medicine, half magic, and all hope. You comply with every ritual. You drink the broths. You avoid the full moon. You wear the protective charm around your neck, even though it chafes. You do it because you remember the edge you danced along last time, the thin, sharp edge between life and death. You're not willing to gamble again. The castle prepares too. A new cradle is commissioned. Linen wraps are stitched. The wet nurse is paid in advance. The priest begins preparing the font. The whole world seems to tilt toward this new arrival. Your son doesn't understand, of course. He toddles through the corridors, fascinated by dogs and puddles, too young to know what's coming. But sometimes he rests his head on your belly, listening, murmuring soft, nonsense words. You wonder if he senses his sibling already, if they'll grow up close or apart, or not at all. You spend the final month mostly indoors. The chamber is rearranged again. The same bed, the same fire, the same scent of sage and boiled linens. And as the first pangs begin earlier than expected, you feel the world go quiet around you. The castle fades. The servants hush. The past dissolves. There is only this moment, this body, this life trying to begin inside yours. You are not ready, but then again, you never were. The contractions begin in the darkest hours of early morning, just as the watchman's horn echoes faintly from the north tower. You lie still, pretending you're not sure, willing the pain to pass, as if denial could stall the tide. But the pressure builds, radiating deep from within, wrapping around your spine like a tightening rope. It's familiar now, the ache, the dread, the rhythm, This time you recognize the tempo of what's coming, and that makes it worse. The midwife is summoned without ceremony. She arrives with the same weathered basket, the same string of charms around her neck, the same air of quiet command. Her eyes meet yours with understanding and a trace of warning. "Earlier than we thought," she says, gently placing her hand on your belly. You nod, but say nothing. There's no need. Your body is already telling the truth. The birthing chamber is smaller this time, more private. You insisted. The last one had too many eyes, too many hands, too much noise. This time it's just you, the midwife, your maid, and the old nurse who's helped raise every child born in this house for the last 30 years. You wanted fewer witnesses. You wanted to feel like a person, not a production. The room is lit with low-burning oil lamps and a single fire in the hearth. The windows are shuttered tight against the spring wind. Herbs hang drying from the rafters, lavender, rosemary, a braid of garlic. Whether they bless or protect, or simply distract you, no longer question it. You breathe them in between each wave of pain, hoping for peace or numbness or both. The midwife instructs you to move. Sitting, standing, kneeling, anything but lying down. She believes in gravity, in movement, in letting the child find their way with the help of the earth itself. You stagger around the chamber, leaning on the maid, gripping the edge of the bed frame when the contractions seize you. Your breaths come in grunts now. Your back is soaked in sweat, and still the child doesn't come. Hours pass. The fire burns low. The sun rises behind the stone walls, unseen, unimportant. The pain sharpens into something almost clean, a blade sliding between muscles, slicing time into painful segments. You scream this time. Not out of fear, but out of necessity. You no longer care who hears. It is a sound of survival, of resistance, of refusal to be undone. There is blood. More than you expected. You see the midwife's face shift. Not panic, but concern. Her hands work quickly. She presses cloth between your legs, rubs your lower back, mutters prayers and curses and encouragement in the same breath. "Push," she says, voice firmer now. "Push, my lady. He's close. You're past language, past dignity. There is only effort and fire and the unbearable weight of the child inside you refusing to yield. And then suddenly, terribly, it's over. A slick weight leaves your body. A hollow groan escapes your lips. For a moment all is silent. Then a cry, thin, reedy, alive. The midwife holds up a bundle of wrinkled skin and dark hair nodding. "A girl," she says. You collapse back onto the bed, bones vibrating with exhaustion, tears spilling from your eyes. Not from sadness, not from relief, just release. A daughter. Against all odds, a daughter. The nurse takes the child, wraps her tightly in linen, and begins wiping her down with warm, herb-scented water. She's small, smaller than your son, but strong. Her cry is persistent, demanding. You laugh hoarse and cracked and whisper, "She's already braver than I am." But the midwife's attention doesn't leave you. Her hands press your belly again. She frowns. "There's more," she says. And you freeze. You don't understand at first. You blink at her, disoriented. But then the pain returns, not the sharpness of delivery, but a deep, dragging pull from inside. You gasp. The midwife's voice is tight now. There's another child. You weren't expecting twins. No one was. Not the midwife, not the wet nurse. Not even the priest's prayers had anticipated this. There's no time to grieve the illusion of rest. Your body already emptied once must labor again. You try to sit up. You can't. Your arms tremble. Your lips are dry. I can't, you whisper. You must, the midwife replies, and she means it. The second labor is faster, more violent. Your muscles are already torn, already worn. You have no strength left. You scream louder. This time, it's not a sound of survival. It's something closer to rage, betrayal, as if your body has tricked you, as if this life, this second life, was hidden deliberately until the last possible moment. When the second child arrives, he is silent, limp. The midwife moves quickly, rubbing his chest, clearing his nose and mouth with her finger, wrapping him tightly and swinging him gently by the ankles. You watch from the bed, too far away, too weak to intervene, breath caught in your throat. Then a gasp. The baby coughs, wails, lives, a boy. The midwife places him next to his sister, now quiet in her nurse's arms. 2 children, born in the same hour, brother and sister, twins. You're stunned, empty, alive, but barely. The bleeding doesn't stop. You feel it pooling beneath you, sticky and hot. You murmur something, maybe a prayer, maybe a farewell. You're not sure. The midwife works swiftly, packing cloth, applying pressure, giving you a bitter tincture made from ergot and red wine. You drink it, gag, let it spill down your chin. The nurse calls for the priest. You don't fight. You close your eyes. The rest is a blur. Faces, hands, a whisper of Latin, the chill of oil on your brow. You think you hear your name. You think you hear your daughter cry. And then nothing. When you wake, it's night. The chamber is dim. The fire has burned low. The nurse dozes in the corner, the twins nestled in a large wicker cradle beside her. They sleep curled like beans, warm and breathing. You turn your head slowly. Every muscle screams in protest. But you are still here, alive. Somehow, against every odd, you've done it again. And this time you gave birth to 2 lives, and nearly lost your own. Morning comes not with sunlight, but with the pale, flickering glow of tallow candles. The world around you is hushed, as if the castle itself holds its breath in reverence or perhaps disbelief. 2 infants sleep soundly near the hearth, wrapped in fine wool, and tucked into a cradle hastily reinforced with extra pillows. The air smells of blood wine and lavender. You can barely move. Your body is a battlefield. Every muscle aches with the memory of strain. Your abdomen pulses with a dull and constant throb, and your legs are heavy as if weighted with iron. But worst is the bleeding. It hasn't stopped, though it's slowed. The midwife keeps pressing cloth against your body, checking your temperature, whispering things in a language that blends folk wisdom with desperate prayer. You hear the word lucky murmured over and over. Lucky to be alive. Lucky to have survived twins. But you don't feel lucky. You feel like a ghost watching someone else's life from inside your skin. Your husband is summoned. He enters quietly, which is unlike him. For once, he doesn't stride across the chamber as a lord of the manor. He steps lightly, hesitantly, as if one wrong footfall might shatter the fragile peace that hovers here. He stands beside the cradle, staring down at the newborns. "They're healthy?" he asks. The nurse nods. Both cried, both fed, both strong. He seems stunned. 2 children, a son and a daughter. An heir and a spare born together. The lineage secured in one fell swoop. He kneels beside your bed, takes your hand. For a moment you see it in his eyes, not just pride, but awe. And maybe something else. A flicker of fear at how close you came to death. "I thought I might lose you," he whispers. When they called the priest, you squeeze his hand weakly. "You nearly did. No more is said. There's no need." The silence between you is full of truths too raw to name. The days that follow are a slow crawl toward life. You cannot stand. You can barely sit. The bleeding ebbs and flows, and your skin remains cold despite the fire. The midwife watches, constantly checking your pulse, pressing bitter herbs into your mouth, whispering incantations from the edge of folklore. She leaves no room for failure. You are not allowed to die. Your breasts swell with milk again, and this time it's more painful than before. The pressure, the heat, the stiffness. Your body, confused and overworked, seems unsure which baby to nourish first. The twins take turns. One cries, then the other. You try to feed them yourself, but the exhaustion makes your arms shake. So the nurse helps. The wet nurse, already familiar, is brought back to share the burden. You allow it gratefully, now not ashamed. There are 2 of them, and only one of you. At night you drift between sleep and waking. The dreams are strange. You walk through forests with no trees. You see blood blooming across your gown like flowers. You hear babies crying from a distant tower. Sometimes you dream of your mother, though you barely remember her face. She says nothing, just stands in the corner watching. And yet you do not break. By the 2nd week, you are strong enough to be lifted into a chair. You sit by the hearth, wrapped in furs, with a twin in each arm. The girl is calm, watchful, always blinking at the firelight. The boy is restless, grunting and shifting in his wrap. You watch them breathe and wonder how 2 lives could emerge from the same womb and be so different already. Everyone treats you differently now. There's reverence in the way the servants address you, more deference in your mother-in-law's gaze. Even the steward nods slightly when you pass. You are no longer just the lady of the castle. You are the woman who bore twins and lived. Word spreads quickly beyond the castle walls. Neighboring nobles send letters of congratulations, some thinly veiled with envy. A local lord offers a silver spoon for the boy, a carved coral charm for the girl. A distant cousin writes with demands to know which twin will be betrothed where. Already they are being measured, these babies who cannot yet speak, already pawns in the future's game. But within the walls of your chamber, you keep them close. You sing to them in low tones, songs your nurse used to hum to you when you were small. Songs about saints, about storms, about lambs lost in the hills. You watch their chests rise and fall, and wonder if your heart can ever be the same size again now that it carries 3 lives, yours and theirs. Then comes the baptism. 2 cradles are carried down the stone hall, draped in lace and ribbon, each baby bundled in white. The chapel is crowded. The priest looks solemn, performing 2 rites instead of 1. Holy water is splashed over 2 tiny foreheads. 2 names spoken aloud. Isolde, Thomas. Chosen by your husband this time, but you insisted on one. Isolde, a name you carried in your dreams, something old and strong, cool, and hidden away until now. You refuse to let this daughter vanish behind her brother's name. She is not a footnote. She is yours. After the baptism, a feast is held, more elaborate than before. The great hall is packed with nobles' servants visiting friars. There are toasts, gifts, music. Your husband beams at the head of the table, the twins sleeping in wicker baskets beside him. You are not yet strong enough to join them. You watch from above, leaning against the stone balustrade with your maid beside you, listening to the roar of celebration below. You should feel triumphant. You should feel victorious. But instead, you feel distant. The world spins around your children now, not you. You've given everything, and in return, you've faded a little. Your body, your blood, your spirit, they were poured out for this moment. And while you survived, something in you feels dimmed, not extinguished, just quieter. That night, as the guests stumble home and the castle sinks into sleep, you sit alone by the cradle. The fire pops softly, casting long shadows across the room. You watch Isolde's fingers curl, watch Thomas blink in the half-light, and you realize you are not who you were. You are something else now, something stronger, something softer, something scarred and sacred. You are a mother twice over, and the world will never understand what that cost. But you will never forget. Summer arrives in waves of heat and dust, sweeping across the hills and fields, making the very stones of the castle sweat. The walls which chilled you to the bone in winter now trap warmth like an oven. In the upper chambers, the air turns thick, unmoving. You throw open the shutters, hoping for breeze, but none comes. It's the kind of heat that turns sleep into labor and labor into torment. The twins grow restless in the heat. Their cries echo through the halls, more often now sharp and inconsolable. Their cheeks flush red. Their tiny bodies slick with sweat, no matter how thinly you swaddle them. You strip them down, bathe them in tepid water, fan them with birch branches, whisper to them in tones that fray at the edge of desperation. Nothing helps for long. You are tired, bone-deep, soul-tired, and there is no stillness to be found. Your days blend into one another like paint smearing across damp canvas. Feeding, changing, rocking, pacing. You barely notice when your own meals are served, and often you forget to eat entirely. The castle staff begin to whisper that the lady is fading again. Some blame the twins. Some blame spirits. A few blame your blood. But you know the truth, it's not any one thing. It's everything. You've become too quiet for the comfort of others. Your husband remarks on it one evening as he prepares to ride out for a summer hunt. You're pale, he says. You look thinner. You smile gently, assuring him you're well, though the dark circles beneath your eyes suggest otherwise. He kisses your forehead and leaves before dawn. You don't miss him. You rarely leave the nursery now. The great hall feels foreign. The chapel feels cold. Even the solar, once your haven, now seems too far from the cradle. You dwell where the babies are. always within reach. The world outside your chambers has narrowed to this point, a cocoon of damp cloth lullabies and sleepless nights. Your maid, a sharp-eyed girl named Ellen, begins taking on more of the child-minding. She has a way with the twins, especially Isolde. When the baby cries, Ellen picks her up before you even have time to stir. You're grateful and jealous. There's guilt in that, and you carry it silently. One afternoon, as the sun strikes the courtyard with cruel light, a messenger arrives from the monastery with a gift, a small illustrated book of saints meant to inspire the children as they grow. You run your fingers over the soft vellum, the delicate ink lines of Saint Margaret, Saint Anne, and Saint Bridget. Mothers, protectors, miracles. You trace their faces with trembling hands and whisper, "Watch over them. It's half prayer, half bargain." That evening, Thomas begins to cough. Just once. Then again. You sit up straighter. You lean in. The sound is wet, the kind of cough that echoes from too deep in the lungs. You press your hand to his forehead. Warm. By morning, it's a fever. The midwife is summoned. The wet nurse returns. Everyone moves quickly, whispering, bringing in bowls of cold water, soaking cloths in vinegar and rose water to press to his limbs. The nurse makes a poultice. The priest is called. Too soon. Far too soon. You do not leave his side. Not for food, not for rest. You sleep in fits, sitting upright in a chair, your head lolling forward, waking every few minutes with a start. Ellen begs you to rest just for an hour. You shake your head. Not again, you whisper. I just got him. For 3 days, the fever clings to your son like a shadow. He moans in his sleep, his face shiny with sweat, his lips cracked. You sing to him through tears, softly, ancient songs, broken melodies, songs your mother used to sing. You don't know if they help him, but they help you. They keep you upright. On the 4th day, the fever breaks. It's so sudden you almost don't believe it. His breathing evens, his body cools. He sleeps not fitfully, but deeply, his face calm for the first time in days. You sit beside him and weep, all the fear pouring out of you like a flood. The midwife says you were lucky. The priest says it was God. The nurse says it was the poultice. You don't argue. You simply hold him tighter, like you could mold your heartbeat into his skin. But even as Thomas recovers, something inside you doesn't. You begin to hear sounds that others don't. Footsteps outside your chamber. When the corridor is empty, your name spoken in the wind. You wake in the middle of the night and think you see someone standing near the cradle. When you blink, they're gone. You tell no one. You fear what they'll say. You begin lighting candles in the chapel each morning, not just for the twins, but for yourself. You feel frayed like a thread pulled too long, too taut, always on the edge of snapping. The world outside the castle is lush now. The fields ripple with tall grass. The orchards hang heavy with fruit, and the villagers celebrate the feast of Saint Mary with dancing and song. You watch from your window, too tired to smile. They live so easily, you think, so freely. No stone walls, no courtly duties, no endless hunger that comes from keeping others alive with your own breath. You envy them, and then you feel ashamed, because you love your children. You love them more than anything. but you are tired in a way that love cannot fix. You write a letter to your sister, a confession, a pouring out. You don't know if it will be read or understood, but you write anyway. I don't recognize myself, you scrawl. The mirror shows my face, but not my heart. I am split in two, mother and shadow. You seal it and send it with a stable boy, not knowing if you'll ever receive a reply. That night Isolde laughs for the first time. It's sudden, unexpected. A tiny bubbling giggle that erupts as you bounce her gently in your lap. And in that moment, the heaviness in your chest lifts just slightly. You laugh with her, surprised at the sound of your own voice. It feels like sunlight through fog. You pull her close, kiss the top of her head, and whisper, "You brought me back." And for the first time in weeks, you believe you might not disappear. The laughter doesn't last, but it lingers. That single moment with Isolde becomes an ember in your mind, a fragile light that flickers even as the darkness presses in again. You carry it with you, tucked beneath the weight of routine. When you rise each morning sore and reluctant, it's her laughter that nudges you forward. When the castle walls seem to close in tighter than ever, you recall that burst of joy, that one note of innocence, and it reminds you that there is more ahead than simply enduring. Still, you endure. Summer wanes, the days grow shorter, the air heavier, ripe with the smell of overripe fruit and smoke from distant hearths. The fields are being cleared. The laborers return, dust-streaked and sore, their laughter echoing up through the open windows of the castle. You hear them sometimes in the evening, their simple songs, their easy teasing, and it strikes you how free they sound. Not unburdened, but free in a way you no longer feel. Your days remain the same. You live on a rhythm of cries and coos, feedings and changings, silences broken only by lullabies and chapel bells. The castle functions around you. Servants come and go. Food is brought. Linen is changed. And you're mostly invisible. A noblewoman, yes. A mother. A symbol. But not often a person. Your husband returns from his hunt late one evening in August. He's bronzed from the sun, smelling of leather and horse sweat, his voice loud as it echoes through the corridor. He brings with him guests, 2 lords and their sons, and insists on a small banquet in the hall. You're expected to attend. Of course. You dress with care, though your hands tremble as they lace your gown. You've barely looked at yourself in weeks. The mirror shows someone thinner, paler. Your eyes look larger, not from beauty, but from sleeplessness. Your hair, once so carefully kept, now coils messily at your neck. You try to brush it smooth. Ellen helps gently, plucking burrs and straw from the ends, her eyes full of silent concern. The hall is warm when you enter. The torches blaze. The lords rise politely, the guests bow, and your husband beams. He offers your hand to one of the visiting sons, a boy of no more than 15, and remarks on your glow. You smile stiffly and sit. The food is rich and hot. Your appetite is gone before the second course arrives. Talk turns to alliances, to land disputes, to dowries. The conversation drifts dangerously close to the future of your daughter. She is not yet 3 months old. Already they speak of her as currency. You say nothing. You sip your watered wine and excuse yourself early. Back in your chamber, the twins sleep peacefully. their faces bathed in the glow of the firelight, their breathing synchronized. You sit between them and let the silence settle over you. You press your palms to your face and breathe. Later that week, word arrives from your sister. Her letter is short. She writes that she read your words over and over, that she too feels like a ghost in her own story, that she sometimes wishes she could wander into the woods and never return, not to die, but to become something simpler, something forgotten. She signs it, still standing. Somehow. You weep when you read it, not out of sadness, but from the quiet relief of being seen. That night, you do something unusual. You wrap yourself in a cloak, take Ellen with you, and descend into the gardens under the moonlight. The herbs are overgrown, the roses sagging from recent rains, the soil soft beneath your slippers. It smells of earth and time and something wild. You walk slowly between the rows, touching leaves, letting petals brush your fingers. You haven't been out here since before the birth. It feels like returning to a memory you'd shelved in some unreachable attic of your monde. Ellen asks if you're all right. You nod. You don't explain. You don't need to. A few days later, a strange shift occurs. Your son begins babbling, nonsense syllables strung together in long chains of sound, as if testing the limits of his own voice. Isolde watches him eyes wide, and then unexpectedly she copies him. Not perfectly, just a few sounds. But you hear it. The beginnings of conversation. You realize they are becoming. No longer blank slates. No longer just bundles of need. But people. With expressions. Preferences. Tones. You learn to recognize Thomas's frustrated grunt, Isolde's sleepy sigh. You start to distinguish their cries. This one means hunger, that one means discomfort, another is simply loneliness. You find yourself responding with words again, not just shushing or humming, but actual speech. You narrate your movements. You tell them what the weather is like. You describe their clothes as you dress them. You explain the taste of the apple you bite. It feels silly at first until it doesn't. The wet nurse, who has been with you on and off since the beginning, smiles knowingly one day. They understand more than we think she says. Their hearts learn even before their minds do. You remember that line. You carry it with you. As the equinox draws near, a strange calm settles over the castle. The chaos of summer is giving way to a slower season, one where the hearth returns to importance and people gather close. You feel it in your bones, a tightening, a folding inward. You wrap the twins in heavier wool. You begin to light the fire each morning. You also begin writing again. At first it's just names, your children's names, over and over in different inks in different hands, then prayers, then stories, fragments of things your own mother once whispered when the storms howled too close to the windows. You find a rhythm. You write between feedings. You write when the twins nap. You write even when your hand aches. And in the margins you scrawl thoughts meant for no one. Things like, I am still here. They did not take all of me. I have not vanished. And slowly you believe them. The woman who lay in blood and linen is still inside you. But so is someone new, rebuilt, reshaped, still healing, but rising. Rising with each sunrise. Rising with each step through the garden. Rising every time Isolde laughs or Thomas babbles, or you find yourself singing for no reason at all. You are not restored. You are reborn. The winds change. Autumn slips into the castle on silent feet, softening the edges of summer's heat. Leaves rustle in the orchard just beyond the walls, and the smell of apples ripening mingles with the ever-present smoke of peat fires. The air grows crisper by the day, and the castle takes on a different rhythm, slower, more contemplative, like a breath drawn in and held. Your body welcomes the change. The coolness soothes your overheated skin, and the gentle gray skies seem to match your quieter, steadier heart. Your steps through the corridors no longer feel like wandering. They feel like returning, as though each creaking floorboard beneath your feet remembers that you too are part of this ancient structure. The twins are now nearing 4 moons of life. No longer newborns, but not yet strong. Still vulnerable, still needy, still entirely yours. But they coo now. They make eye contact. They smile not just reflexively, but with something behind it. Recognition. Affection. You feel it like a thread tied between you two tiny anchors that keep your soul from drifting too far into the dark. Ellen helps you take them outdoors. Bundled against the chill, they are cradled in your arms as you walk slowly through the kitchen garden, where parsley and leeks have survived the first frost. You kneel awkwardly, resting your daughter's sleeping head against your shoulder, and trace a finger along the frost-rimmed cabbage leaves. It feels like the world is renewing itself in front of you. A raven caws from the battlement. You look up, half expecting an omen, but it's just a bird. Just a moment, not a warning. Not this time. You find yourself talking more freely again. To the babies, to Ellen, to the priest who visits now and then to check on your spiritual condition. He asks if you've confessed recently. You hesitate. Not because you haven't, but because you're not sure what you'd confess now. That you wished not to survive the second birth, that you wanted to run far into the woods and vanish barefoot and nameless. That you sometimes feel nothing and sometimes feel too much. Instead you say, "I've prayed." He accepts that with a nod. At supper, your husband tells you of troubles beyond the castle. Another manor 2 valleys east has suffered a fire. Crops lost. A sick child who didn't survive. He shakes his head. "We are fortunate," he says. And you know he's right. You are fortunate. And yet. Later that night, with the fire burning low and your son curled against your chest, you stare into the flames and whisper, "Why do I still feel like I'm surviving?" There's no answer, of course. But the baby stirs. His little hand flexes against your collarbone. His mouth opens in a silent yawn. That's enough answer for now. You find comfort in rituals. The washing of linens, the brushing of your hair by candlelight, the drawing of water from the stone cistern. You walk the nursery floorboards over and over until your feet know every knot and squeak. You trace the same path every evening, cradle hearth, window cradle again, like a pilgrim pacing a sacred site. In this repetition, there is meaning. Not glamour, not joy always, but meaning. One morning, as the fog clings thick and low across the countryside, you awaken to the sound of church bells. Distant, melancholic. Ellen is already at your side, lighting the fire and whispering news. A noblewoman of your husband's kin has died in childbirth. Her first child, a boy, stillborn. She bled. The midwife couldn't stop it. You sit very still. You ask Ellen to repeat it. She does. The name of the woman floats in the air like perfume. You didn't know her well, but you shared a lineage. You shared a fate. And it could have been you. It could still be. You send a prayer up that night, not to Saint Margaret or the Blessed Mother, but to the woman herself. You say her name aloud and promise to remember her, not just as a cautionary tale, but as someone who deserved to live, to breathe, to hold her child. That evening you press your daughter to your chest, her heartbeat fluttering like a bird beneath your hand, and whisper, "I'm sorry." You don't know why you say it. Maybe to the other woman. Maybe to your daughter. Maybe to yourself. But the words hang there for a long time. The next morning you ask to walk the outer bailey. It surprises everyone, even yourself. You haven't left the inner court in months. But the sky is blue, the air is dry, and something inside you needs to move. Not just pace. Move. Your husband arranges a small escort. Just Ellen, a nursemaid with the children, and one quiet guard. You cross the drawbridge for the first time in nearly a year. The world outside the castle feels massive, raw, too bright. You shield your eyes for a moment, taking it in the low hills, rolling toward the horizon, the scattered sheep, the forest's edge. You feel exposed, small, but you keep walking. You walk until your legs burn. You rest on a moss-covered stone beneath a leaning tree. The twins sleep nearby in their baskets, guarded and bundled. You look at them, then up at the sky. And for the first time since their birth, you breathe deeply, not out of exhaustion, not out of fear, just to breathe. The moment holds, and you know you're not done healing, but you're no longer just surviving. You're beginning again, still, despite it all. And as the leaves fall gently around you, you allow yourself finally to believe you might grow too. The leaves fall in golden spirals carpeting the castle courtyard, with soft layers of amber and rust. Autumn deepens, and the castle grows quieter, heavier. The air sharpens, the days grow shorter, the nights stretch endlessly. Time bends in strange ways, now measured less by clocks or bells, and more by the needs of your children, by your own aches, by the moods of the wind. Inside the thick walls, warmth is precious. Fires must be tended constantly. The hearth in your chamber burns low at dawn and high by dusk, and still there are places in the room that feel icy to the bone. You learn to bundle the children with practiced efficiency, wrapping their tiny bodies in wool and linen, whispering reassurances as you press their cold noses to your chest for warmth. You feel more like a hearth yourself now than a person. You exist to keep the cold away. But the cold isn't only in the stone. It creeps inward. There are days you wake and don't want to rise. Days where your arms feel heavy and your mind dull like soaked fabric weighing down your thoughts. You go through the motions, dressing, feeding, rocking, but your soul feels far away, watching from behind some invisible veil. You smile for your husband. You nod when the steward asks about provisions. You hum lullabies, but you do it all as if under glass. You wonder if anyone sees it. If they notice that your smiles are slower to form, that your laughter has grown rare. You wonder if your husband remembers the woman you were before the births, or if he's simply content with this new, quieter wife, productive, respectable, maternal. You begin to forget your own voice. When was the last time you spoke without softening your tone? When did you last raise your voice for joy, or protest, or passion? You can't remember. The twins continue to grow. Each day they change, more alert, more vocal, more insistent on being seen. Thomas grabs at your fingers now. Isolde has begun to mimic your facial expressions with uncanny precision. You smile, she smiles. You frown, and she studies you concerned. They are watching, always watching, and this terrifies you, not because they notice, but because they might learn from you. They might inherit this quiet sorrow stitched into your bones. They might grow up thinking that motherhood means disappearing, that to be a woman is to bend and bend until you no longer remember your own shape. So you begin tentatively, clumsily to reclaim something of yourself. You start to sing again, not just lullabies, but songs from your youth, frivolous things, love songs, ballads of long-lost knights and clever girls who escaped towers. At first your voice is shaky out of practice, but soon it grows stronger. You catch Ellen smiling as she listens from the corner of the chamber. Even the nurse hums along sometimes, her voice low and coarse, blending with yours like harmony. You also begin writing again, this time not just fragments, but full pages. Journals, letters, stories, not all of them about motherhood. Some are fantasies, some are memories, some are sharp, aching truths you dare not speak aloud. In one entry you write, "I thought giving life meant giving everything, but there must be something left, something that belongs only to me." You keep the journal hidden beneath the linens in a cedar chest, not out of shame, but because it feels like a seed, something planted in the dark, something that might bloom. Your sister writes again. Her words are heavier now. She has lost a second child, another miscarriage. Her pain spills across the parchment, raw and unfiltered. She asks how you keep going, whether you've ever wanted to leave, whether you sometimes think of running. You hold the letter in your hands for hours before replying. You write, "Yes. I think of leaving all the time, not to escape them, but to find myself again. But then I look at them, Thomas with his furrowed brow, Isolde with her steady stare, and I remember that I am not just theirs. I am still mine. Somewhere I am still mine." You weep after sealing the letter, but it's not sorrow alone. There's something else inside the tears, a clarity, a strange and fragile hope. The castle prepares for winter. Wood is stacked high near every hearth. Preserves are sealed in wax. Wool cloaks are mended and aired. The steward inventories salt and flour and dried meats, muttering constantly to himself. You watch from the solar window as the world contracts, as everything folds inward. You are folding inward too, but not in surrender, in preparation, because you sense something rising within you. Not energy, no, you are still tired. That doesn't vanish, not yet. But resolve. Strength, not loud or showy, but steady. The strength that comes from doing the same hard thing every day. From holding, from feeding, from singing, from not running when you desperately want to. From being the fire when the hearth grows cold. You're beginning to understand what no one tells you about birth. It doesn't end in the birthing chamber. You are always birthing children's selves' futures, over and over in blood and breath and quiet decisions. You are always in labor, And for the first time, you don't feel broken by that. You feel remade. Winter arrives not with snow, but with silence. A hush settles over the castle like a heavy wool cloak. The wind wails through the arrow slits. The floors grow colder beneath your slippers. The fire never truly rests. It crackles and pops all hours of the day, fed constantly by the servants, its smoke curling upward like breath from the walls themselves. The twins are 6 moons old now. They no longer lie still like wrapped bundles. They roll, reach, even crawl in short, wobbly spurts across the rush-strewn floor. You've started laying soft cloths near the hearth so they can sprawl and stretch their limbs. Thomas is bold, grabbing anything within reach: your hair, a spindle of yarn, the corner of a page from one of your books. Isolde is quieter but sharper. She watches everything with those solemn eyes, her mouth always slightly parted, as though ready to ask a question she hasn't learned the words for yet. Your days revolve around them, not out of duty anymore, but out of desire. You want to be with them. You no longer feel like a stranger in your own skin when you hold them close. Their weight no longer reminds you of the pain it took to bring them into the world. It reminds you instead that you did. You endured. You bled and screamed and cracked open like earth in drought, and still you emerged with 2 beating hearts against your chest. Now they are laughing, drooling, teething little miracles, and every time they reach for you, they stitch your soul a little tighter. But motherhood has not erased your solitude. Your husband has grown more distant with the season. He attends meals but rarely lingers. He spends hours in the council chamber debating land disputes and tax collection. He rides out on hunting parties that last for days. When he does return to your chambers, it is with the weight of expectation rather than the warmth of affection. He kisses your cheek, praises the children, murmurs a few lines of scripture or politics, and departs before you have time to speak your truth. You do not blame him, but you do not miss him either. Your connection has become something functional, a shared roof, a shared duty. 2 lives running parallel but never intersecting. Sometimes you wonder if he's relieved to have you so absorbed in the nursery, to have a wife who doesn't ask for more than what has already been taken. But you are asking quietly, not for him, for yourself. You continue to write. The pages in your journal grow thicker. You begin sketching little moments: the curve of Thomas's ear, the slant of light over Isolde's cradle, the exact shape of the frost clinging to your window pane at dawn. You record your thoughts like someone trying to anchor herself to time, like someone afraid of slipping through her own life unnoticed. And then one night something shifts. You're sitting by the fire, both children asleep, the castle murmuring its usual nighttime lull. Ellen brings you a book, not a prayer book, or saintly tale, but a story. A tale of a young queen who disguised herself as a commoner to escape an unwanted marriage. It's filled with danger and wit, with cleverness and choice. You read it twice that week, then 3 times. You find yourself whispering parts of it aloud while rocking the babies, as if its rhythm carries a kind of magic. The queen in the story does what you've never dared. She chooses herself. It's fiction. You know that. But still, it lights something in you. You begin asking questions. You ask the steward about the books in the lower library, who maintains them, what's been neglected. You ask the cook about herbs in the winter cellar, about their uses beyond flavor. You begin attending chapel not just for prayer, but for listening. The friar speaks of parables of mercy, of transformation. And as he does, you watch the tapestries flutter in the draught and think not of heaven, but of possibility. You begin to seek out small acts of reclamation. You embroider again not altar cloths, but a sash for your own gown. You choose a deep blue thread nearly black and stitch a pattern that no one else understands. You wear it under your robe like armor. You begin to teach Ellen letters, slowly, carefully, by the fire in the evening. She is hesitant at first, but she learns. You laugh together when she writes her name for the first time, crooked and proud. You should teach the nursemaid next, she says one night. You smile. Perhaps I will. You start to believe you could be more than what you were trained to be. Not because someone told you, but because you feel it deep beneath the fatigue, beneath the memory of blood and screaming and prayer. There is a core in you that is untouched, a well that wasn't emptied by birth, a fire that wasn't smothered. One evening as you prepare to sleep, Thomas stirs and fusses. You pick him up and walk the length of the chamber, bouncing, gently humming that silly ballad again. His head presses against your shoulder, warm and heavy. You whisper, "You saved me." And you mean it. Because without him, without her, without this crucible of motherhood, you might have remained a silhouette in your own life. But now, even in the quiet, even in the cold, you are rising again. And it feels like power, not loud, not blazing, but slow, steady, real. You stare into the fire that night and do not weep. You smile. By midwinter, the castle exists in a kind of suspended breath. The world beyond the walls is frozen, locked in silence. Snow lies thick across the outer bailey, softening the clatter of hooves, muffling the clang of tools. Smoke coils gently from the chimneys, joining the gray sky in a seamless veil. Inside life condenses to its barest elements: warmth, food, rest, and repetition. You fall into rhythm. The twins wake early now, before the dawn bell. Their cries echo in tandem as if by secret agreement. You rise, your body responding almost before your mind catches up. Feed, change, wrap, rock. You do it without thought, like a song you've sung 1,000 times. But there's comfort in the predictability, in the simple fact that they still reach for you, that they still need you. Your husband is away again. A hunting trip, though you suspect there are diplomatic threads woven through the journey. You don't ask questions. You stopped asking long ago. He leaves with a kiss to your forehead and returns with dried mud on his boots and tales of hounds and snowbanks. The silence between you is no longer tense. It's simply accepted. Like a hallway that's always been empty. Instead, your days are filled with smaller voices. Ellen, who now writes full sentences, who beams when you hand her new parchment, who jokes shyly that one day she'll write the stories. The wet nurse older than you thought, who hums lullabies from a land further west, her language soft and curling like the smoke from her pipe. The twins now babbling nonsense like fledgling birds. They sit upright with assistants, swipe at spoons, chew on anything that passes near their mouths. They are loud, joyfully, defiantly loud. You've never been so glad to lose sleep. You begin reading aloud again. Not scripture, not sermons, but tales. You read to them as though they understand, And maybe they do, in that unspoken way children grasp the shape of stories. You watch their eyes widen at the rhythm of your voice, the swell and hush, the rise and pause. They don't know the meanings of the words, but they know you're building something with them. One snowy afternoon, as the sky darkens long before nightfall, a strange letter arrives. It is sealed with unfamiliar wax silver, with the impression of a bird mid-flight. Inside is a note from a distant noblewoman. She has heard of your twins. She commends your fortitude. And then, carefully phrased, she asks if you might host her for a week. Just her. No retinue. You pause. Women don't write letters like this, at least not to you, not without motive. But something in the way she writes, gentle, educated, precise, pulls at your curiosity. You show the letter to Ellen. She frowns. It's odd, she says, but not threatening. You nod slowly, then send word back, yes, you'll receive her. Midwinter's end. The weeks leading up to the visit pass slowly. You keep your mind busy teaching Ellen more, stitching new mittens for the twins, even helping the steward review the household stores. When the woman finally arrives, it's early morning, and the snow has melted just enough to reveal the stone road beneath. She is not what you expected. She is young, your age, maybe younger, dark-haired, serious-eyed. She carries only one maid and no baggage but a single leather-bound case. She introduces herself as Lady Evelyn, bows with precision and smiles like someone who is used to being underestimated. You make room for her in the solar. You offer wine. She asks for tea instead, the bitter kind if you have it. You like her instantly. She stays 5 days. In that time, you learn more than you have in months. She speaks of letters between noblewomen, of learning of art, of healing practices that blend herb and hymn. She shares how women across distant manors have begun writing to one another, directly bypassing their husbands entirely. Not for rebellion, for connection. To survive the weight of roles none of them were ever asked to choose. She brings you books, real books, not sermons, not psalters, stories, philosophy, even one written by a woman from a southern court. She wrote it in secret, Evelyn whispers. Her brother thought it blasphemy. But I think it's salvation. You talk for hours by the fire. One evening you ask, do you think we're allowed? Evelyn lifts an eyebrow. Allowed to be more than what they expect. To want. She pauses, then replies, I think we've always been more. We just needed to say it aloud. That night after she retires, you sit by the twins and say it aloud. I want more. Not riches, not escape, not rebellion. More of yourself, more space, more voice. A few days later, Lady Evelyn departs. You embrace her tightly. She leaves a list of names women across the realm who write teach wonder. She says, as you're not alone even here, even behind stone walls. After she's gone, the castle feels different. Not emptier, wider. You write your first letter that week, not to your sister, not to anyone you know, but to one of the women on Evelyn's list. You don't introduce yourself as a noblewoman. You don't list your children's names. You write, I gave birth twice in one night. And for a long time I thought I'd died doing it. But I didn't. And now I want to learn who I am beyond the blood and the silence. You seal it. You send it. The The snow begins to thaw outside, and inside you begin to thaw too. The first rains of spring arrive not with a roar, but a whisper soft and insistent like fingers drumming on old wood. The snow dissolves slowly, revealing patches of black soil and the first hints of green at the edges of the castle yard. The stone walls no longer breathe frost. They sweat. Everything drips. Everything smells of thawed earth and damp fabric. You wake one morning to birdsong. Faint. Familiar. It startles you not for its beauty, but because you'd forgotten it existed. The castle has been so still, so hushed for so long, that the sound feels like a sudden crack in the silence. You press your hand to the window pane and feel the cold moisture gather beneath your palm. The twins stir in their cradles behind you, but you wait. You stay still just for a moment, listening, breathing. You've survived another winter. You've emerged from it changed, not mended, not whole, but tempered, like steel hammered in fire. You're not the woman who gave birth in blood and candlelight. You're not the ghost who drifted silently through the nursery. You're something else now, something heavier, something rooted. And with the thaw comes movement. You begin walking again, first the corridor, then the stairs. Your legs protest, but you move. You take the twins into the garden on clear days, letting them feel the sun on their faces even as the wind nips at their cheeks. They giggle when you lift them. You hadn't heard them laugh like that before. It fills you with something dangerous, something joyful. Ellen stays close, still writing, still reading. She has begun composing letters to her own cousin, sharing the bits of knowledge you've taught her. One afternoon, she says, "I thought I'd be a maid my whole life. I didn't know there were other ways to be." You don't know what to say. You only smile. The steward begins to consult you more, not out of flattery, but necessity. Your memory is sharp. You notice what others miss. You suggest changes in rationing, identify waste, even recommend which villagers to employ for spring labor. You're beginning to manage things again, not just in the nursery, but in the world beyond it. Your husband notices. He comments one evening while the fire burns low and the children doze. "You've grown stronger," he says. You nod. "I had to." There's a pause. He watches you for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "I wasn't sure you'd come back to us." You hold his gaze. Neither was I. You don't talk much more that night, but something unspoken settles between you. A recognition, a quiet truce. Letters begin arriving regularly now. Not just from your sister who writes of long walks and new hopes, but from women you've never met. Noble women, widows, daughters of merchants. They share stories of childbirth, of loneliness, of longing. Some are hopeful, some are bitter, some are blisteringly honest. One writes, "I screamed at the priest when he told me my pain was holy." Another, "I dreamed I walked into the woods and never came back." You read each letter slowly, carefully. You reply to every one. You don't offer answers. You offer truth. "I nearly died. Twice. Not just from the birth, but from forgetting who I was. I love my children with all that I am, but I am still more than a mother. I'm learning to live again, not as who I was, but as who I might become." These women become a lifeline, not because they rescue you, but because they remind you you were never alone in your quiet. Your silence was echoed in chambers and keeps and cottages all across the kingdom. And then one day you begin writing something longer, a full account, not for the church, not for the steward, not for your husband, but for yourself. You begin with the night of the birth, the heat, the pain, the way the world narrowed to blood and breath and fear. You write every detail, the weight of the midwife's voice, the sting of the holy oil on your brow, the hush that followed the cries. Then the second child, the bleeding, the nothingness, then the after. You write about the silence, about the hours of staring into the fire, unable to move, about the bitterness, about the days when your body felt like a borrowed thing, about the moments when you weren't sure you existed outside your children's needs. You don't spare yourself. And when you reach the part where the laughter returned, the moment Isolde's giggle cracked open the world again, you pause. Your hand trembles. You write. That was the moment I began again. You finish the account slowly over weeks. And when it's done, you do not hide it. You keep it near your writing desk, wrapped in cloth, bound in leather. One day, you'll give it to your daughter, or your son, or maybe to no one. But you've written it, and that's enough. The garden bursts into bloom before the equinox. Daffodils push through the last frost. Violets scatter beneath the hedges. The trees bud green and loud. You walk with the children now, not just carry them. They stumble along the path, chubby hands reaching for petals, mouths wide with astonishment at every color. You watch them, heart aching with something deeper than love, something like awe. You turn your face to the sky. You close your eyes. You whisper, I am still here. And for the first time since the night of the birth, you believe it without doubt. The castle comes alive with the full breath of spring. Stone walls that once sealed and cold now echo with birdsong and the distant murmur of fields being plowed. The orchard trees bloom, their blossoms drifting like pale snow across the courtyard. The old gardeners speak of a good harvest to come. The friar hums again as he passes through the cloisters. Everything is becoming, including you. The change isn't sudden. It's a slow gathering, a reclaiming. You notice it in strange moments when your feet no longer ache by midday, when the mirror reflects not hollowness, but alertness when you laugh freely at something. Ellen says, then pause, surprised by the sound of your own voice. You find yourself humming again, not lullabies, but tunes you heard long ago in your girlhood, half-remembered melodies of summer fairs and festival nights. You hum as you dress, as you tidy the nursery, as you rock the twins to sleep. They respond now, with their own music gurgles and babble small voices that fill the room like sunlight fills stained glass. You take joy in their growth. Thomas is strong, eager, often impatient. Isolde is curious, persistent, quiet, but never passive. She studies every corner of her world like she's memorizing it. Sometimes you find her staring at you, not idly, but deeply, like she's reading a book only she can decipher. You hold that gaze and wonder what she sees. One morning after breakfast, you take them to the chapel. Not for Mass, just to sit. You light 2 candles. You whisper nothing. You simply sit with them in the light and the silence. For the first time in months, you feel not penitent, not wounded, but grateful. Not for survival, but for becoming. Your husband returns from a journey to the capital. He arrives with gifts, rare preserves, dyed fabrics, letters from court. He kisses your hand, smiles at the children, and lingers longer than usual. You dine together that evening, not in the great hall, but in your chamber alone. He watches you as you pour the wine. "You're different," he says. You nod. "Stronger," he adds. "Sharper." You meet his eyes. Yes. He doesn't ask what changed. He doesn't need to. Something in your bearing now holds answers you no longer feel obligated to explain. Later, when the children sleep, you sit by the fire and reread the letter from Evelyn. She has written again, shorter this time. Busier, she says. The network of women is growing. Ideas are spreading. Some noble households now allow daughters to read, even write. There's talk of a meeting in the summer. Not a rebellion, nothing that would raise suspicion. Just a gathering, a sharing. She invites you. You run your fingers along the edge of the parchment. Ellen watches you from across the room. She's been helping the steward more, now learning to balance accounts, to order provisions. She's not just a maid anymore, and she knows it. You should go, she says softly. They should hear what you have to say. You turn the letter over. You think of Isolde, of Thomas, of the night you thought you might die, of the morning you whispered, "I am still here." You nod. I think I will. Preparations begin quietly, not with gowns or servants or declarations, just with thought, with lists, with words. You write down what you wish to share, not just about birth, but about everything that followed. The silence, the forgetting, the remembering. You realize you've been building toward this for months, not to tell a story, but to offer something. Not just your suffering, but your strength. And in that offering, something in you settles. That night you tell Ellen the full story. From the moment labor began to the silence after, to the nights when your body shook with weeping you could not name. You tell her everything. And she doesn't flinch. She listens like someone memorizing scripture. And when you finish, she says, "You're more than you know." You think maybe she's right. The garden blossoms wildly now. The vines climb high. The birds nest in every corner. Even the old oaks seem to stretch higher as though waking from a long slumber. You walk the paths with the twins toddling behind you. Ellen at your side, a letter tucked inside your cloak. You look back only once, and not out of fear but gratitude. Because the castle was your crucible. The birthing chamber was your tomb and your cradle. And now you walk with purpose. Now you walk toward something. You leave the castle just before dawn. The gate creaks open as the sky turns from slate to rose and the fields shimmer with dew. The path ahead is long and uneven, muddy from spring rains, bordered by early wildflowers and the first bursts of green wheat. You ride alone save for one guard, and Ellen, who insisted half sternly, half tearfully on coming with you. Not as a servant, but as your companion. You didn't argue. The twins remain behind. Safe, fed, warm, loved. Your chest aches at their absence, not in panic, just in echo, as though your ribs still remember the weight of their small forms pressed against you. You kissed each of them before you left, lingering a moment longer over Isolde. Her fingers curled tightly around your braid. She didn't cry. She only looked. That long, searching gaze, that same calm gravity you've begun to understand isn't innocence, it's knowing. You ride on. The journey takes days, and with each mile the air grows lighter. The horizon stretches wider. You pass hamlets and fields, watch the smoke rise from distant cottages. You see women carrying pails from wells, sweeping doorways, hushing babies in their shawls. You nod to them from the road. They nod back. You think they are all versions of me, or I am a version of them. On the fourth day you arrive. A manor house not grand but solid, tucked into a hillside wrapped in ivy. You are greeted not with trumpets or ceremony, but with warmth. The door opens before you knock. Evelyn is already smiling. The flickering fire behind her casts golden light across her cheek. "You came," she says. "I had to," you reply. Inside, the air smells of herbs and parchment candle wax and bread. The other women arrive slowly in twos and threes. They come from far across rivers and borders, languages and customs. Some are richly dressed, others plainly. But all of them carry the same look in their eyes, one you know intimately now. The look of someone who has survived something wordless. You gather in a hall with low beams and wide windows. No husbands, no servants, no guards within earshot. Just women, just you. It begins with silence, then a name, then a story. You hear tales of stillbirth and betrayal, of joy so overwhelming it spilled into grief, of choices never offered, of courage quietly carved into the folds of ordinary life. They speak of bodies torn and stitched, of faith lost and remade, of nights spent rocking infants while watching spiders cross the ceiling. You listen until your soul swells, and then finally you speak. You tell them everything, of the stone chamber and the first cry, of the second child you didn't know you carried, of the blood, the priest, the silence. You tell them about the winter that stole your name, about the journal, the songs, the letter. The day Isolde laughed, the night you whispered, "I want more." When you finish, no one claps, no one nods. They simply sit with you, like your silence is sacred. And that is enough. The days that follow are unlike anything you've known. There are no rules, no titles, no need to prove or justify. You share knowledge, stories, recipes, books, remedies, laughter. You take walks in the orchard. You write poems in the margins of borrowed manuscripts. You teach Ellen how to press flowers between the pages. She teaches another woman to count in her native tongue. Each moment stretches like sunlight over water. And then, as all things must, it ends. You say your goodbyes in the orchard under the same trees that bloomed in your childhood tales. Evelyn clasps your hand and says, "Write to me. You promise." And this time you mean it. The road home feels shorter. Or maybe it's that you're lighter now. Your hands are empty, but your chest is full of voices, of stories, of names. When you see the castle again, gray and looming against the sky, you don't feel dread. You feel ready. The gate opens. The twins squeal with delight. You lift them both into your arms, staggered by how much they've changed in only days. Thomas is heavier. Isolde has a new tooth. You laugh breathless and kiss their cheeks again and again. Ellen unpacks in silence, but her smile hasn't faded since the journey began. She walks differently now, taller. That night after the children sleep and the castle quiets, you light a candle and sit at your desk. You open a fresh page, and you begin to write not for salvation, not even for healing, but simply because you can. Because you lived. Because you are more. Because you remember. And now you've returned. From the quiet terror of stone chambers and the hush of wintered grief. From the long ride through wild fields and deeper questions. You've returned not to where you were, but to where you've become. Tonight, as you settle into sleep, let the image stay with you, the woman in the firelight, writing by hand in the stillness of night. Her ink dark and steady, her candle unshaken. You saw her afraid. You saw her broken, but now you see her whole. The story of giving birth in a medieval castle was never just about labor or lineage or survival. It was about becoming, through pain, through silence, through voice, through choice. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking alongside her through snow, through blood, through rain, through rebirth. Let her strength wrap around you now like a woolen cloak. Let it settle across your shoulders, warm and quiet. You don't have to be in a castle to know this story. You only need to be someone who has ever tried to hold on when everything seemed to slip away. Who has ever looked in a mirror and wondered, where did I go? You're still here, still breathing, still becoming. Now close your eyes. You're safe. You're seen. You're more than they ever told you you could be.